Daf Yomi. Tractate Shevuot, page 42a, and starting from the bottom of 41b, bottom of the page, starting a story. The Gemara relates, Ahuda Amar Le Chavre, Havli Shet Mea Zuze, Demaskena Bach, Amar Le, Velo Parataich, Ticha, Mea Kabe. The Gemara relates that there was a certain person who said to another, give me the 600 dinars that I claimed from you. And the latter said to him, but I didn't repay you. But didn't I repay you with 100 kav? And that takes us now to 42a on top of the page. Didn't I pay you with 100 kav of gallnuts? Didn't I pay you with 100 kav of gallnuts that were worth 600 dinars for each kav at the time? Amar le. The creditor said to him, Lav arba ha-b'kaimi, atotre ha-divamre in arba ha-b'kaimi. Amar Rava huchzak kafran. Amar Rami barchama had amit kol mita devara minare diinish lavadaite. Amar le Rave kitsuta ditara mitikar dichri inashi. So the creditor said to him, weren't they worth 4 dinars for each kav? So the person, the debtor said they're worth 6. So he says they're worth 4. The 2 witnesses came and said, yes, they were worth 4 dinars per kav. Rava said that the debtor assumes the presumptive status of one who falsely denies his debts. Rami Bar Chama said, but didn't you say that anything that is not incumbent upon a person is not on his mind? Perhaps he merely forgot what the price of gallnuts was at the time that he paid. Rava said to him, people remember the standard set market price. Okay? Ahuda marle chavre havli me'azuze dimaskena bach v'ashtara amarle braticha amarle anahu sitra ininu amar Rav Nachman itra sitra Rav Papa amar la itra shtara. The Gemara rates another incident. There was a certain person who said to another, give me the 100 dinars that I claimed from you, and this is a promissory note attesting to the debt. The latter said to him, I already repaid you. The creditor said to him, that money you gave me was for a different debt. Rav Nachman said that the promissory note is undermined by the fact that the creditor admits that he received payment equal to the amount specified in the note, and his claim that there was an additional debt is unsubstantiated. Rav Papa said that the promissory note is not undermined. Ule Papa Maishna me'ahu demalei chavre havli mea zuze demaskena bach v'hashtara amalei lav atore yehavta li ve'atet ve'it amas chata Vikabet Zuzach Amarle Hanehu Sitrai Ninhu Vi'amar Rav Papa Itra Shtara. The Gemara asks, but according to Rav Papa, in what way is this case different from the incident where a certain person said to another, give me the 100 dinars that I claim from you, and this is the promissory note. The latter said to him, didn't you give me that money as an investment to be used for buying oxen to be slaughtered? And you came and sat in that slaughterhouse and received your money, including your share of the profits from the sale of the slaughtered oxen. And the creditor said to him, that money you gave me was for a different debt. And Rav Papa said that in that case the promissory note is undermined. Hasam kivan de amaratori yahavli umitore shikal itrash darahachaim sitra eninu. The Gemara answers there, since the debtor said, you gave me the money for oxen and you took payment from oxen, and the creditor admitted that this had happened, the promissory note is undermined because there is no support for his claim that there was another debt in addition to the acknowledged transaction for the oxen. Here, say that the payment was in fact for a different debt. My Avi Ale Rav Papi Amar Lo itrashtara Rav Sheshet Pred Ravidi Amar Itrashtara V'hirchata Itrashtara. What halachic conclusion was reached about this matter? Rav Papi said the promissory note is not undermined, and Rav Sheshet, son of Rav Edi, said the promissory note is undermined. And the halacha is that the promissory note is undermined. והני מילי דפרעה בהפסע דבלו יתקר לאשתרה אבל פרעה בין תיתה לדידה מגוד יכול לממר לא היו דבר מעולם יכול למה לממר סתרא נינו וכדי אבימי פרעי דרבי אבהו. And this statement applies in a case where he repaid him in the presence of witnesses and did not mention the promissory note to the creditor, but in a case where he repaid him privately between the two of them in the absence of witnesses, since the creditor can say to him, this matter never happened, meaning he could deny that he received any payment. He can also say that this money was for a different debt. And this is like the case involving Vimi, son of Rabbi Abahu, who repaid a debt in the absence of witnesses, and the creditor then claimed that the payment was for another debt. See Ketubot 85a. Ahu de'amar le'chavere mehemanat li. Kol emat de'amat li la pirana. Azal pare b'pesahadi. Abaye v'roved amrit alvayu ha-hemena maskif lav papa nehid hemena tfe minavshe tfe misade mi hemane. The Gemara relates, there was a certain person who said to another who had lent him money, I deem you credible whenever you say to me that I did not repay the debt. He then went and repaid the debt in the presence of witnesses, and the creditor later denied that he had been repaid. Abai and Rava both say that the witnesses are not deemed credible, and the creditor can collect payment as the creditor deemed him credible at the outset. Rav Papa objects to this and says, although he deemed him more credible than himself, concerning the possibility that the debtor would claim that he repaid the debt and the creditor would deny having been repaid, did he deem him more credible than witnesses? Therefore he is exempt. Amar Rav Papa the Gemara relates there was a certain person who said to another who had lent him money, I deem you credible like two witnesses whenever you say that I did not repay the debt. He went and repaid the debt in the presence of three witnesses. Rav Papa said that the creditor cannot deny the testimony of three witnesses. Three witnesses, as the debtor deemed him credible like two witnesses, he did not deem him credible like three witnesses. Amar le Rav Huna beredi Rav Yehoshua le Rav Papa emod yam Rabbanan dazdinan batarov deot hani mili linyanat umdena Chama nefishi beki tefe aval inyan edus mea kitri utre kemea. Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, said to Rav Papa, say that although the sages say that we follow the majority of opinions and the opinion of three people is therefore accepted against the opinion of two, this statement applies with regard to assessing value, as the more people there are, the more knowledgeable they are. But with regard to testimony 100 witnesses are like 2, and 2 are like 100. Therefore, in this case, there is no distinction between 2 witnesses and 3 witnesses. Lishnach lina haudam ale chaverei mehem li kebet rei kol emos damrat lo pana azal parei ve'apetelata amar papa kebet rei emna kevetelata lo emna. The Gemara presents another version of the incident. A certain person said to another who had lent him money, I deem you credible like 2 witnesses whenever you say that I did not repay. He went and repaid the debt in the presence of 3 witnesses. Rav Papa said that the creditor cannot deny their testimony, as the debtor deemed him credible like 2 witnesses. He did not deem him credible like 3 witnesses. Maskevla Rav Huna Belay de Rav Yehoshua Trei Kemea Umea Ketrei I Amar Le Keve Telata Le'azar Parei Be'apeb Be'arba'a Kevan Nechet Le'deot Nechit Le'deot. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, objects to this. 2 witnesses are like 100, and 100 are like 2. But if the debtor said to the creditor that he deems him credible like 3 witnesses, and then went and repaid him in the presence of 4, then once he entered by mentioning a larger number than what is necessary for testimony, the realm of opinions in which 3 people carry greater than 2 he has entered into the realm of opinions. And 4 witnesses are deemed more credible than 3. Therefore, the creditor is not deemed credible against them. אין נשבעים על טענת חרש ששואל דבקותן, ואין משפיעים לסקותן, מה יתיים אמר כבר, כי ייתן איש אל רעהו כסף או כלים לשמור. ואין נתינה קטן כלום. אין נתינה קטן כלום. The Mishnah teaches one does not take an oath concerning the claim of deaf, mute, an imbecile, or a minor, and the court does not administer an oath to a minor. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? The Gemara answers that in the passage from which the halachot of admission to part of a claim are derived, the verse states, if a man delivers to his neighbor silver or vessels to safeguard, Exodus 22, verse 6, the word man indicates that the reference is only to adults and delivery by a minor is nothing. Okay? Meaning, it is not recognized as a halachically significant act, as a minor is not halachically competent. The Mishnah teaches, but one does take an oath to a minor or to a representative of the temple treasury with regard to consecrated property. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say in the first clause that one does not take an oath concerning the claim of a deaf, mute, an imbecile, or a minor? Amarav Bava b'ta'anat aviv. The Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov the Tanya Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer Pamim she'adam nishba al ta'anat atzmo ketzad amar lo mane labicha yadi ve'echaltiv pras harei zeh nishba v'zehu שנשבע על טענת עצמו, וחכמים אומרים, אינו אלא כמשיב אבדה ופטור. Rav said the halacha that one takes an oath concerning the claim of a deaf, mute, an imbecile, or a minor is with regard to one who comes to court with a claim for a debt owed to his late father. And it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, as it is taught in a Braita, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that there are times when although no one has claimed of a person that he owes money, that person takes an oath on the basis of his own claim. How so? If one said to another, your father had 100 dinars in my possession, but I provided him with repayment of half that amount, he is liable to take an oath that he repaid half, and that is the case of one who takes an oath on the basis of his own claim. And the rabbis say, in that case, he is only like one returning a lost item, as the son did not claim the money at all and is exempt from taking an oath. ורבי אליעזר בן יעקב לסלם מישיבה ודפתו אמרה בשטענו קטן. The Gemara asks, but is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov not of the opinion that one who returns a lost item is exempt from taking an oath attesting to the fact that he did not take anything from it? Rav said the Braita is referring to a case where a minor advanced a claim against him. The creditor's minor son claimed that the debtor did not repay any part of the loan to his father. The debtor's partial admission came in response to that claim. Therefore, his admission is not comparable to the act of returning a lost item. Katan ve'amar te'nishba el tanas chera shel katan lo'inam gadol ve'amai karo le katan l'gabi milei davu katanu. The Gemara asks, how can the Braita be referring to the claim of a minor? But didn't you say in the Mishnah that one does not take an oath concerning the claim of a deaf, an imbecile, or a minor? The Gemara answers, actually, the reference is to an adult son. And why did Rav call him a minor? It was due to the fact that with regard to his father's matters, one is like a minor, as he is uncertain about the particulars of his father's dealings. Here too, Rav explains that the halacha in the Mishnah that one takes an oath to a minor is referring to an adult claiming a debt owed to his late father. Ihachi, ta'anat atzmo, ta'anat achirim, hi. Ta'anat achirim, hoidat atzmo. The Gemara asks, if so, if the son making the claim has already reached majority, the language of the Braita is imprecise. Why does the Tana describe the individual as one taking an oath on the basis of his own claim? This is not his own claim. It is the claim of others. The Gemara answers, the Braita employed that language because although it is a claim of others, he is taking an oath on the basis of that claim and his own partial admission. And now we turn to Daf Yomi Amid Beis. We are turning the page, turning the page, turning the page, turning the page. Mem Beis Amid Beis, top of the page, with words Kulanami Ta'anat Acherim Mehodat Atzmo Ninhu. The Gemara challenges all other cases where the defendant is required to take an oath due to partial admission are also cases of a claim of others and his own admission. Yet in the Braita, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov introduces his opinion with the term, there are times, indicating that the case to which he is referring, one of taking an oath on the basis of his own claim, is not the standard case of an oath due to partial admission. Ela b'derabba k'miflagi, d'amar mipnei ma'amar to'era moed miksa satan yishava chazaka ein adam me'iz panav yifnei bal choy voy v'hai v'chulei boy d'lechaperei v'hai d'lo chaperei mishum de'eno me'iz panav b'fnei bal chovo. The Gemara answers, rather, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the rabbis disagree with regard to the statement of Rabbah as Rabbah says. For what reason did the Torah say that one who admits to a part of the claim must take an oath? It is because there is a presumption that a person does not exhibit insolence by lying in the presence of his creditor, who did him a favor by lending him money. And this person who denies part of the claim actually wants to deny all the debt so as to be exempt, and this fact, meaning that he does not deny all of it, is because a person does not exhibit insolence in the presence of his creditor. I don't know if that's always the case. Anyway, let's continue. Lev Rachmana Amar Remi Shua Il Lave Kechi Dilo De Le. Rabbah continues, and in order not to exhibit insolence, he wants to admit to the creditor with regard to all the debt. And this fact, meaning that he did not admit the entire debt to him, is because he may be temporarily avoiding paying him. He rationalizes doing so by saying to himself, I am avoiding him only until the time that I have enough money and then I will repay him. And therefore, the merciful one says in the Torah, impose an oath on him in order to induce the debtor to admit the entire debt to him. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Sava, lo yishna bo v'lo yishna b'vno, eno meiz. V'yilkoch lav, me'yeshiva v'edu, v'rabanan sari b'fanavu, de'eno meiz. Avol b'fnei b'no meiz, u'min de'lo meiz, me'yeshiva v'edahu. With regard to this principle, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov maintains, it is no different with regard to the creditor himself, and it is no different with regard to his son. The debtor would not exhibit insolence and deny the debt. And therefore, he is not deemed as one returning a lost item on his own initiative. Rather, this is an ordinary case where one admits to a part of a claim and is therefore required to take an oath. And the rabbis maintain it is in the presence of the original creditor that one would not exhibit insolence, but in the presence of his son, who did not lend him the money, he would exhibit insolence and deny the claim entirely. And since this debtor is not exhibiting insolence, as he could have denied the loan completely, but instead is opting to admit to part of the claim, he is deemed as one returning lost item, and his claim is accepted without his taking an oath. Mi matzis mokmad le כדי רבי אליעזר בן יעקב, כנראה שמנה לבא בידך, ואינך בידי, אלא 50 דינר פטור, מפני שמשיב עבדהו. Hasam delo amar beri li, acha de amar beri li. The Gemara asked, can you interpret the Mishnah in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Isn't it taught by the former clause that the claimant says, my late father had 100 dinars in their possession, and the defendant responded, you only have 50 dinars in my possession, he is exempt from taking an oath, as he is like one returning lost item? The Gemara answers there is referring to a case where the claimant did not say, I am certain that you owe my father money, but rather made an uncertain claim. In such a case, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov agrees that the defendant is like one returning lost item. Here, by contrast, it is a case where he said, I am certain that you owe him. Returning to the Gemara's question with regards to the last clause of the Mishnah, which states that one takes an oath to a minor or to a representative of the temple treasury. Shmuel said a different answer. When the Mishnah spoke about taking an oath to a minor, it was referring to a case where the debtor died. The creditor must take an oath to the minor heir, attesting he was not repaid, in order to collect from the minor's property. Similarly, if one's debtor consecrated his property, he takes an oath to a representative of the temple treasury in order to collect from the consecrated property. The Gemara challenges the halacha that one takes an oath to a minor in order to collect from a minor's property is one that we learned in the Mishnah in 45a. A woman who comes to collect the payment for her marriage contract from the property of orphans collects only by means of an oath. Why do I need two Mishnayot to teach this halacha? Hakamash Milan, Kid Abai Kashisha. The Amar Abai Kashishi, so Mishnah Gedolim, Ben Zavlan, Magadani, Ben Shua, Ben Lizaburis. The Gemara answers by mentioning this halacha twice. The Mishnah teaches us this. The halacha applies with regard to both minor and adult orphans in accordance with the statement of Abai the Elder. As Abai the Elder taught, the orphans of which the sages spoke are adult orphans, and needless to say, the same halacha also applies to minor orphans. This principle applies with regard to both the halacha that a debt can be collected from the property of an orphan only by means of an oath, and to the halacha that a debt can be collected from the property of an orphan only from inferior quality land. With regard to Shmuel's explanation of the Mishnah that one takes an oath to a representative of the temple treasury in order to collect a debt from consecrated property, the Gemara asks, we learn this halacha in the Mishnah 45a from liened property that has been sold, one collects a debt only by means of an oath. And what difference is it to me whether the property was liened to an ordinary person? And what difference is it to me whether the property was liened to the Most High, meaning it was consecrated? Itztrich. Wow. Itztrich Salkadayach Namina Hedyot who the Adam Osekinunya al Hedyot al Hekdish the Ain Adam Osekinunya al Hekdish Kamashpon. The Gemara answers, it was necessary for this halacha to be stated separately with regard to collecting debt from the temple treasury. Otherwise, it might enter your mind to say that it is specifically in order to collect a debt from an ordinary person that one is required to take an oath, as a person is liable to collude with another against an ordinary person who purchased property by producing a promissory note for a debt that was already repaid in order to collect property from the purchasers of land that had been lien to that debt. But one might have thought that in order to collect a debt from the temple treasury, a person is not required to take an oath. A person does not conclude with another against the temple treasury. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches us that one is required to take an oath even in order to collect a debt from the temple treasury, as one is suspected of collusion in this case as well. The Gemara asks, but doesn't Rav Huna say that in the case of a person on his deathbed who consecrated all of his property and said, so-and-so has 100 dinars in my possession, his statement is deemed credible, as the presumption is that a person does not collude with another against the temple treasury? The sages said in response, that statement applies only in the case of a person on his deathbed, as a person sins only for his own benefit. One is not suspected of deceiving the temple treasury for the benefit of his heirs. But with regard to a healthy person, we are certainly concerned about collusion, even against the temple treasury. A little brief break here. New Mishnah. Ve'elu devarim she'enish bain aleihen avadim eshtarois ve'akalkois ve'akdeishois. Ein bahem tashlumei kefa v'u tashlumei arba v'chamisha shumachinam eino nishba no se Sofer eino mishalim. The Mishnah says, and these are items concerning which one does not take an oath by Torah law: Canaanite slaves and financial documents and land and consecrated property. In a case where these items are stolen, there is no payment of double the principal, nor is there payment of 4 or 5 times the principal in a case where one stole a consecrated animal and slaughtered or sold it. An unpaid bailee who lost one of these items does not take an oath that he was not negligent in safeguarding it. And a paid bailee does not pay for the loss or theft of one of these items. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Chadash shechaya b'achayusan nishbayin aleihen v'she'enon chaya b'achayusan ein nishbayin aleihen. Rabbi Shimon says there is a distinction between different types of consecrated property. With regard to consecrated property for which one bears the financial responsibility to compensate the temple treasury in the event of their loss, such as in a case where he vowed to bring an offering and then set aside an animal to be sacrificed in the fulfillment of the vow, one takes an oath concerning them as they are considered his own property. But with regard to consecrated property for which he does not bear the financial responsibility for their loss, one does not take an oath concerning them. Rabbi Meir Omer, Yesh devarim she'ein bekarka ve'ein kekarka ve'ein chachamim moedin lo ketzad eser gefanim tiunois msarti loch ve'hala Omer einan ela chamesh. Rabbi Meir mechayev Shevuos chachamim moedin Rabbi Meir says there are certain items that are physically on the land but are not treated like land from a halakhic perspective, and the rabbis do not concede to him concerning this point. How so? If one makes the claim, I assign you 10 grapevines laden with fruit to safeguard, and the other one says there are only 5 vines, Rabbi Meir deems the defendant liable to take an oath, as he admitted to a part of the claim. And although the claim concerned grapevines, the primary aspect of the claim was the grapes. And the rabbis say the halachic status of anything that is attached to the land is like the land itself, and therefore he is exempt from taking an oath. אין נשבעים אלא על דבר שבמידה ושבמשקל ושבמניין. כיצד? בייס מולי מסרתי לך, וכיס מולי מסרתי לך. והלא אומר, איני יודע, אלא מה שהנחת, אתה נוטל פטור. זה אומר עד עזיז, וזה אומר על החלון חייב. One takes an oath only concerning an item that is defined by size, by weight, or by number. How so? If the claimant says, I transferred to you a house full of produce, or I transferred to you a pouch full of money, and the other person says, I do not know how much you gave me, but what you left in my possession you may take, and the amount in the house or pouch at that time is less than that claimed by the claimant, the defendant is exempt from taking an oath, as the amounts in the claim and the admission are undefined. But if this party says that the house was full up to the ledge, and that party says that it was full up to the window, the defendant is liable to take an oath, as the dispute relates to a defined amount. Gemara. The Gemara says, Tashlumi kefum inalan tanabanan al kol davar pesha klal al shor v'al chamor v'al se v'al salma prat al kol aveda chazar v'klal. From where do we derive that one is exempt from the payment of double the principal with regard to the items mentioned in the Mishnah, as the sages taught in Braita with regard to the verse that discusses double payment for every matter of trespass, whether it be for an ox, for a donkey, for a sheep, for clothing, or for any manner of lost thing, he shall pay double to his neighbor. Exodus 22 verse 8. This verse is expounded in the following manner. The phrase, for every matter of trespass, is a generalization. The phrase, whether it be for an ox, for a donkey, or for a sheep, for clothing, is a detail. And when the verse states, or for any manner of lost thing, it is generalized again. Klal uprat to klal. Yatadan elkeina prat. Consequently, this verse contains a generalization and a detail and a generalization. And one of the 13 principles of exegesis states that in such a case you may deduce that the verse is referring only to items similar to the detail. Applying this principle here, one may conclude that just as each of the items mentioned in the detail is clearly defined as an item that is movable property and has intrinsic monetary value, so to anything that is movable property and has intrinsic monetary value is subject to double payment. Yatsu karkois. Land is therefore excluded, as it is not movable property. Canaanite slaves are also excluded, as they are compared to land in many areas of halakha. Financial documents are excluded, since they are movable property, and they do not have intrinsic monetary value. The value of the paper itself is negligible. Documents are valuable only because they serve as proof of monetary claims. Finally, consecrated property is excluded because it is written in the verse, he shall pay double to his neighbor, meaning to his fellow man, but not a representative of the temple treasury. The Mishnah teaches, and there is no payment of double the principal, nor is there payment of 4 or 5 times the principal for stealing consecrated animals. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for the exclusion of the payment of 4 or 5 times the principal? The Gemara answers, since payment of double the principal is excluded, that leaves in a case where one steals and then slaughters or sells a consecrated animal a total payment of only 3 or 4 times the principal, as the payment of double the principal is included in the larger payment for selling or slaughtering it. Therefore, since the merciful one states in the Torah 4-fold or 5-fold payment, and not 3-fold or 4-fold payment, one who steals a consecrated animal and slaughters it or sells it is exempt from the additional payments. The Mishnah teaches an unpaid bailee who lost one of the excluded items does not take an oath. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? The Gemara answers that it is as the sages taught in a Braita.